Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. Thank you guys for joining me once again on such short notice. So, the big thing that we're hearing definitely about a lot is the flooding going on in Texas. So, we're going to start over there. And it's kind of, as the title says, it's reminiscent of Harvey, what we're seeing going on with the amount of flooding. And so, this is off of Twitter. And this is an actual newsroom. They've had to stop their wall-to-wall coverage on Imelda and evacuate their building due to flooding. Look at these pictures. Flooding coming in. I don't know what floor they're on. Hopefully it's the first floor. That would be scary, but we've seen incredible flooding going on, not just in Texas, obviously everywhere. But Texas hit by Imelda deluge, flash floods, life-threatening rainfall. It's as bad as I've ever seen. And again, we're talking about a lot of people that have seen things like Hurricane Harvey. And it's just incredible what we're seeing coming in. Up to 5 inches of rain per hour. It could fall in Harris County. That is a lot. The city of Hampshire saw more than 40 inches of rain, 25 of which fell in the 12-hour window. And they're predicting over at AccuWeather a total of 55 inches. This says it all. This really does. Make the best out of the situation. And I was semi-joking with you guys yesterday about inflatable boats. Well, yeah, somebody actually did reach out to me in doing a sponsorship on inflatable boats, and honestly, I'm looking into it because they seem to make a lot of sense. Just think about it. It's one more thing for your bug out situation, and many people can't. They might not have a truck or might not have the ability to keep a boat on hand, but hey, an inflatable one in a case of emergency. We're seeing this. We've seen so many people rescued, and we've seen so many main streets under 5 feet or more of water. And we were talking about flooding yesterday over in the Far East where, 16 feet deep water. That's incredible. So they're telling people to remain where you are and be safe. So in Chambers County, at least 200 people had to be rescued in the town of Winnie, located about 60 miles east of Houston. And in addition to the flash flood warning, they also have a tornado warning for that county. And just look at what you're seeing here. And this is not over. 22 inches of rain in this locale. And these grounds are saturated. And as we will go further on and take a look at, now there's a lineup of storms happening. The conditions are such that we could end up having an extremely busy second half to the hurricane season. And this is kind of, they did call this, but they called it like not too long, right before we started to experience all these things. So that city has been hard hit by flooding. An additional 50 households are on a waiting list to be rescued as of Thursday. Airboats from the Sheriff's Office and Texas Park and Wildlife Department were helping with the rescues, along with high water vehicles. And here you see a passerby grabbed a hammer from his truck and just saved this guy's life. We've talked about that before as well. Don't try to make it if you have any doubts, crossing something. Just don't do it. So this truck driver intentionally drove into the high water on 59 North and the Beltway, and he got stuck. And everybody on 59 watching them got worried. And as we had said before, it's as bad as I've ever seen it. Right now, I'm in an absolute deluge of rain. So says this gentleman Hawthorne, with the telling the Associated Press that this town looks like a lake. And he said it's the worst storm-related flooding he's experienced after going through hurricanes, including Rita and Harvey. Oh, and thank you so much, Paul Winkler, for the super chat. It is definitely appreciated. As we've talked about before, things like the super chat and Patreon are definitely keeping the channel afloat, as a lot of channels have been hard hit in these times, and we could just kind of leave it like at that. But thank you so much for the super chat. It's definitely appreciated. So in Jefferson County's Beaumont, a city of just under 120,000 people, it's about 30 miles from the Gulf of Mexico, authorities said all service roads were impassable. 2 hospitals were inaccessible. This is seriously a horrible situation, and they have requests for more than 250 high water rescues and 270 evacuations. George Bush Intercontinental Airport in Houston's open, but surrounding streets are flooded. Flights are experiencing delays up to roughly 4 hours. Just incredible as the photos keep coming in. As this says, there's no words to describe the rain we're seeing in Winnie, Texas. It's relentless. It's unforgiving. And there's videos, of course. And this car or truck, it looks like maybe it's an SUV. Hard to make it out, but it looks like it's about to be lifted up and just start going floating down the stream. And again, another storm that's moving super slow, which just exacerbates the situation. And so you see some current conditions in Aldine and Kingwood. And, wouldn't be too much more, and this will be totally submerged. Hopefully nobody's inside. The Cajun Navy says its volunteers are currently using surface drive boats to carry out water rescues in Vidor, Beaumont, and other areas. The Louisiana-based nonprofit rescue group's president, Sean Boudreau, tells NPR he's currently working with emergency workers in New Caney, north of Houston. And, there are a lot of good Samaritans out there. There are a ton of good Samaritans out there. And, when I'm seeing this area, I'm thinking, 2 people come to mind. Shannon Ann, for those of you that have been with the channel a while, she has a channel, Shannon Ann Prep and Texan. She did some hurricane rescue work herself, going from Texas to Florida to help out with Michael. And then Thor Anderson, who's also a good friend, he's always in the middle of all these things, just always helping out wherever he could. And, there's great people like that. There's tons of people like that are out there just doing good because they just want to help people. That's all. There's no payback in mind. It's just out of the goodness of their heart, and they feel like they have to. And here you can see, just this flooding, which is just such an inundation. And you got to wonder, what's this going to be like in, say, another 5 years? And I know there's a lot of people out there that think in 5 years' time, will any of us be around? But we always got to maintain those positive attitudes and positive outlook. And we have to adjust. 42 inches of rain, incredible. Most of it in the last 24 hours. And she looks like she's actually having a good time with the boat ride. And hey, the dogs are staying dry. Streets turned into rivers. And still, there's hundreds of people waiting to be rescued. And again, as we were talking before, when something like this hits close to home, then maybe we stop thinking about the Bahamas, and how many people are still missing, homeless, and lacking all the supplies that they need. We've had so many of these situations. Think what happened to Puerto Rico. It's just been one after another after another. Lots of videos here. I'll have all the links for you guys as well. These type of scenes, it's just getting to be commonplace all across the globe. Submerged vehicles, desperation. So the thing to think about really is, if you're in one of these areas, what are you going to do? Do you have the ability? Do you want to move? Do you want to stay where you are and you're just going to keep hoisting the house higher? And I lived in Milford, Connecticut for 17 years. And, there were some areas by the beach that got severe flooding at certain times. And so, when a lot of times when damage came, they would just simply raise the foundation, and if people were able to, because, again, not everybody's able to. And, insurance will only cover so much. So Imelda continues dumping heavy rain parts of southeast Texas, already the 5th wettest tropical cyclone for the contiguous U.S. So it's already setting records. And it wasn't like this super scary, impressive storm coming in, not as far as the winds and all, but boy, it is sure doing damage. And as we said, part of this is just the continuous buildup. When you have some areas already hitting their annual rainfall and you're not even halfway into the year, you're going to be in trouble. And then you get something like this on top of it. The ground can't take it. And some people have brought up really, really good points with what does the weight of all this water do to the ground? And in areas that are prone to earthquakes, what does that do? So when we're talking about, say, the New Madrid area, adding all that water and the weight from the water into it, and then the ground as well, it's an interesting thing to bring up. So this storm has been declared the 5th wettest tropical cyclone in the U.S. And, it's just incredible. And this was, as we said, it wasn't that impressive looking, and it's another massive rain-making event. And look at those totals. That's incredible. 32.5 inches, 34.5 inches of rain in 72 hours. And as we know, when you're starting to talk about Louisiana, a lot of these areas are reclaimed from the sea, from the Gulf. So when you look at the highest rainfall totals, Harvey, 60 inches, that was in 2017. And, again, that to me was like the kickoff to everything going into super high gear, just into a totally different place. So you see, then you had Amelia, Easy, Claudette, and now we have Imelda. And so, not a good situation. And as always, we'll send our prayers and best wishes for those people and everybody that's able to help in other ways. That is a beautiful thing as well. So here we see Grant County flooding leaves days of cleanup for farmers. And this is up in Wisconsin. And so Grant County farmers and emergency management staff say they have had more than 16 inches of rain the past week. 6 inches of rain came down overnight, leaving farmers in the area with days of cleanup to follow. This is about the 3rd or 4th 100-year flood in the last 5 years. So we had talked about it also, where the experts have come out and said, those 100-year floods, well, they're going to happen every year. That's basically what we're going to have now in this new cycle. And, perhaps we'll even have them every 6 months. So again, how do we prepare for this? And, there's overtures of war going on as usual with Iran. We've talked about that situation at length. Many people are very, very aware of it. And yet we kind of get weary of hearing this all the time. And it does grate on you. But yet, all the money that we spend and the military budget has just incredibly ballooned. And the deficit is the biggest ever. And we have the Republicans in there now, quote unquote, the conservative party that, used to always have an issue with spending and always used to accuse the Democrats of spending too much. And yet we're spending more than ever. And when you look at it, it doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or a Republican. The spending always goes up. Deficits pretty much go up. We've had just a few exceptions. But, it just keeps going in the wrong direction. When you have these natural, quote unquote, disasters going on every single day, isn't it time to kind of refocus our attention? and, prioritize people. And the other thing that, like we're talking about, this is a farmer issue right here. So, these people's livelihoods are in jeopardy or destroyed, but it's even more than that. It's the food supply, so it's all about the food supply in the long run. And it's getting to be more and more precarious every single day. And this is out of USA Today. They're forming like roaches. 6 tropical storms whirling at once has set a record. So, aren't we lucky we get that record set? And we're saying just how busy it's gotten all of a sudden. And then, one of two things seem to always happen with these storms. Either they get somewhere and they just stop, or they go from being, a tropical depression to a category 5 in just a couple of days with speed that we never saw before. And it's the middle of hurricane season, but this is ridiculous. And so this is from USA Today again. Do you guys agree that this is ridiculous? What do you think? 6 named storms going at once in the Atlantic and Pacific set a record. While Humberto and Kiko were spinning in the Atlantic and Eastern Pacific, 4 new tropical cyclones formed on Tuesday. Imelda and Jerry in the Atlantic, Mario and Lorena in the Eastern Pacific Basin. The combined number of active storms in both basins was believed to tie a modern record set in 1992. And so he tweeted, this is Eric Blake of the National Hurricane Center, "They are forming like roaches." It's not something you see all the time. But he also said it's not unheard of, as we know, back in 1992. And we did see a lot of storms like this in 2017, 2018. Last year, we saw quite a few come up after such a slow start. It felt like, we're going to get a reprieve. But no, it didn't actually turn out that way. And so we see the coldest September morning in 6 Australian towns, dust storm warning as well. And the changeability, that's another big thing. It's just been so extreme. And so we have some places completely inundated, other places dry as a bone. And again, we need to do stuff on a global scale, working together. Obviously, if there's a deluge of water, if we can make nuclear weapons and spend, $1 trillion, because it's at like 700 billion now, the defense budget in the U.S. alone. So globally, over $1 trillion is spent on weaponry. Just think what we could do if we put all that like money and technology into taking and storing water in areas that we don't need it and moving it to other areas that we do need it. Or how about, digging greenhouses in the desert and, irrigating en masse. There's so many things we could do. If we had the will, we could alleviate all the suffering on this planet. But again, unfortunately, so many things must be profitable. And that's what a lot of this boils down is to profits and control, hoarding resources. Very, very sad situation. September 2019 is Mumbai's wettest ever, setting another record there. So the first 18 days of September in 2019 recorded 36 inches of rains in Mumbai, India, breaking the previous record that was set in 1954. And as we talked about, the weather conditions that are setting up over in eastern Africa are going to influence the whole area, whole Indian Ocean area. So the extremes are probably going to get worse. And, the way some of the buildings are over there, you got to wonder again, when the ground is getting so saturated, you got to worry about instability too. And we've seen incredible landslides, mudslides as well. So we have a very deep 6.2 and 6.0 hitting near the coast of Java, Indonesia. As we've said, Indonesia is probably one of the most active places in the world when it comes to any of the major, Earth-related events, whether it's earthquakes, risk of tsunami. Obviously, there are many active volcanoes there as well. Checking out the USGS, we see them listing 312 quakes right now. And we can see the big ones over towards Indonesia. There's a 5.7 aftershock. There's the 6.0. And as we said before, many think this whole area is what was left over of Lemuria. And interestingly enough, more and more people are catching on to the fact that New Zealand and Zealandia is perhaps its own continent, or will be. During these earth changes, there was a lot of prophecies that say there's going to be an awful lot of landmass rising over here. And that gets us into the thought of how quickly do things really, really change? How quickly do they? I mean, we've always been told millions of years, millions and millions of millions of years, slow, gradual change. But is that really the case? So we're looking at Hawaii. When we see this trail right here, okay, there is basically a plume. There's a spot where, and this is how all these islands were formed, is shooting up the material to make the islands. So when we look at this plume and the direction, at one point we have a pretty big shift here. So the plume doesn't move. The crust does. So to many, this would indicate that the crust all of a sudden moved at a pretty large rate. And what would you say that angle is? Maybe 100 degrees, 110 degrees? That's a large shift. So very interesting. There's evidence there that things that happen, they can happen extremely suddenly, extremely violently. As we know, there's seashells, at the top of mountains that are over 10, 12,000 feet high. And so if we zoom in, we still see there's activity going on over in Ridgecrest and China Lake. Less than I've seen perhaps at any other time. So you have 89 right here in this whole greater area. And, this is Nellis Air Force Base. This is the Nevada National Security Site, which is basically about 60% of the state of Delaware. That's how big this place is. And you see some little quakes listed, but I think these are more weapons tests and things along those lines, more than likely. So that begs the answer to ask the question, same thing with China Lake here. Are these really quakes? Are these really quakes? What do you guys think? And maybe they are quakes, but what really, really caused them? What perhaps caused the big one that came as well? All interesting thoughts. So we see a 4.7 over there in Greece, 4.3 over here in Argentina as well. A lot of swarming as usual going on in Alaska. And talk about being able to see things in things. The Scream weather mask. Sometimes weird forms appear during a storm, and radar imagery makes you wonder about our reality. So this is a storm that was raging over in Iowa. Can you guys see a face in that? I bet you can. A lot of you can. We've seen some scary things too. I've seen some kind of devilish looking faces in volcanic fires that have come about. Eruptions as well. And interestingly enough, a lot of times when there's volcanic eruptions, there's a lot of UFO activity as well, which is really interesting. So U.S. and Canada have lost 3 billion birds since 1970. Scientists say nature is unraveling. It's an empty feeling in your stomach that these same birds that you grew up with just aren't there anymore. So that begs to say the question again, why are we going along on the same trajectory, the status quo? So many people were scuffed at as, tree-hugging hippies, all that type of thing. There was so much negativity put towards people that actually seemed to care about the planet and were speaking up about it decades ago. Now, because so many people have been affected directly, you get less of that. More people now are actually saying, you know what, we got a problem here. We most definitely have a big problem, but why are we still not really doing too much about it? And the whole system has to change. The whole mindset of those at the top have to change. And this says Pete Morrow remembers bird watching in the woods behind his childhood home in Norwalk, Connecticut in the 70s. So that's very close to my heart. I worked in Norwalk. I lived about 12 miles from Norwalk, and also grew up in the 70s. And, there were frogs everywhere. There were toads everywhere. There were turtles everywhere. All the streams had fish in them. Now, you go up to these streams and, so many of them, there's nothing there. It's just totally devoid of life. There's nothing there anymore. And some, there might be a fish here and there, but it's not like it was. Life is not abundant like it was. And that is so sad. And even the birds. And there's so many different types of birds that are getting to be rarer and rarer. And so many woods have been cut down, like from my experience then when I moved down into the Carolinas, you would see so many new developments, and the first thing they do is chop down every single tree. And that's just so sad. And then they put the development up, and then they go plant other ones here and there. But they don't replace at all the number that are cut down. And so the resources of the planet are being more than wasted. They've just been attacked with a venom. And the way that we've seen this world go, and I was talking about this with friends yesterday, it's more than a disdain. It's almost like there's an actual, almost a hatred towards the planet, towards the Earth itself. And it just seems like it's even more than just plain old negligence. It's just a horrible situation. And so we're losing all sorts of wildlife. And do you have does this make you surprised in the least? Can you get cancer from tap water? New study says even safe drinking water poses risks. And again, we've talked about if we act like viruses on the planet, then obviously the immune system of the planet's going to attack us like we are viruses. And enough things are not being done at all. Not at all. A new report from the environmental advocacy watchdog group cautions that carcinogenic products in tap water may altogether increase cancer risk for thousands of U.S. residents over a lifetime. And cancer rates are increasing. They have been increasing. They've always been increasing. And it's because our bodies are exposed to too many pollutants. And as we've talked about, in this world, you basically almost have to be doing a daily detox for the rest of your life now. It really is that situation. So breakfast this morning was fresh juice, and we had a lot of parsley in it. And then we had a lot of other healthy things. I've shared videos on that. The whole thought is getting nutrients in. The whole thought also is detoxing things like we were saying, bentonite clay, diatomaceous earth, boswellia, which is Indian frankincense, very powerful. There's so many things that we can do, but we have to be constantly cleansing. Milk thistle for the liver. Your body is being exposed to all sorts of carcinogens. So in this peer-reviewed study published Thursday, the EWG found 22 carcinogens commonly found in tap water, 22 common ones, and all could cause cancer. Arsenic, byproducts of water disinfectants, radionuclides such as uranium and radium. Wow, just the stuff that is in our water supply. And we've talked about Emoto's experiments with water, and we should probably bring that up before we conclude here for those of you that haven't seen it before. Just intention alone could negate a lot of the negative effects. Intention alone, your prayers, and pray any way you want to. Pray any way you want to, as long as you're setting out the right frequency. Because again, everything is energy. It's all about vibration, frequency. That's the key. It's your frequency. So it's not about saying any particular magic words. It's about intent and frequency. And you could change the frequency of water, because water is kind of like, it's like a blank slate that we can go ahead and manifest whatever we want to with it. And perhaps we should think about that as well in these times with these earth changes, as it's just kind of hitting me. There's a reason why Native Americans and other indigenous people would do their rituals, their, rain dances, what have you, because we can manipulate our reality in a positive way. So a calming, numbing medication turned a woman's blood blue. And she says, I'm weak and I'm blue, she told her doctors. And that's not what blood's supposed to look like there. And isn't it interesting? And that this woman developed this sometimes fatal condition. It turned her blood a deep shade of navy blue through a medication that was prescribed. Now, we've been told that colloidal silver could turn your blood blue, although I personally don't know anybody that's ever had that happen to them or turn themselves blue. And I myself have taken quite a bit of colloidal silver, and so have so many of my friends and family members, and nobody's ever turned blue. But here we see a medication doing that. And so, meet a long-lost relative. This is Denise the Denisovan. And we didn't even know about Denisovans just going back a couple of decades ago. But they are another form of humanoid being that shared the planet with us, and actually might be one of our ancestors, at least sharing some partial DNA, along with Neanderthals as well. And so this is the first reconstructed anatomical profile of what were considered a mysterious group called the Denisovans. And so she was revealed on Thursday by researchers at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. So pretty interesting, doing a reconstruction. And we could see the facial features that would not be uncommon in many groups today. We are definitely a mix. We are mutts. We are all mutts. And I hope that nobody takes that wrong. But, there's a lot of people that believe there's been a lot of genetic manipulation going on the planet. And there are those that believe that all of this is really an experiment, and that we are actually all basically like one big ant farm. It's an alien ant farm, so to speak. According to some beliefs, and perhaps that's the case. If we listen to people like Corey Goode, he talks about 22 genetic experiments ongoing right now at this time. If we talk about abduction phenomenon, it's all the time that they're always taking samples of our reproductive material as well as our DNA, and also checking to see exactly how all the effects of the pollution and all the stuff going on in the environment are affecting us as well. And people that are subject to these events, these incidents, where they're actually taken, will tell you they have no doubt that there are aliens, and there are extraterrestrials. And of course, when you think about it, the angels and God himself would be an extraterrestrial because he's not from Earth, right? Well, maybe. Anyway, and there's also interdimensionals as well, we are all multidimensional beings, irregardless, as many are realizing. And scientists are saying that, we're basically set up to function on 10 or 11 different dimensions at one time. So we've heard about the multidimensional nature of our reality. And, that is something that now is bearing out as true. So very interesting, right here. And there's so much still that is missing from our history, and that's still hidden. So solar panels, vegan diets, no flights, meet America's climate revolutionaries. And no, it's not all about carbon taxes and that, as we recognize that, the sun itself has way more power than we do on the planet. And then if we're talking about actually being in an energetic zone that we have talked about as being the photon belt, that we come through every so often, every maybe 12,000 years, that causes these massive catastrophes and climatic changes, and ultimately a huge reduction in the population. Yet also brings on a golden age because of all the energies that come in and activate our DNA and actually literally change us and bring about new species as well. It's all a very, very interesting thing. So there are a lot of people that are already saying, I don't care about carbon taxes, but I still want to not impact the environment in a negative way, and I don't want to be part of this system that is destroying the planet. And so they're adopting ways that they feel in their heart is better for the planet and makes them feel better in their own conscience, and they feel like they're contributing in some way that they can contribute. And so many people are doing a lot of these things, and a lot of people are actually banding together into smaller groups, smaller communities. A lot of people are now living with extended families, and sometimes those extended families aren't even all blood related, as we are trying to conserve and to also work together to survive these times, because we definitely need to pull together when we're seeing everything that's happening. So 3 easy steps for a more positive view, and that is just so imperative right now in these times. It's so easy to look at everything we have going on and get really depressed and get pulled down into a negative frame of mind. But if we are increasing in vibration and frequency, and we are truly going up through a dimensional octave into a higher octave, we will be able to manifest things much quicker. So we got to be so careful about where our intent is, where our frame of mind is. According to the National Science Foundation, our brains produce as many as 50,000 thoughts per day. Not surprisingly, as much as 95% of these thoughts are on a repetitive loop. It's the same thing all the time. For most of us, we have very few new creative thoughts, and that's a sad situation, but we run on autopilot. How many times you're on the highway going to work and you're thinking the same thing in your head, and it's, I hate this, I can't stand this job, I hate fighting this traffic, why am I doing this, oh, it's only Monday. All these thoughts that just go through your mind while you're not really focusing hard on anything, but it's the same loop that's going through. Well, all those thoughts are just reaffirming the negative. So we must really change our mind, and we could reprogram our mind in many different ways. And as Buddha said, the mind is everything. What you think, you become. Very true. It's in our power to direct our thoughts if we learn to incorporate certain practices into our daily lives. So the value of practices like meditation, yoga, QiGong, Tai Chi is incredible. It's just incredible. Working with a client this morning, first thing I wanted them to do is to breathe abdominally. And so this person has a very active mind, and like so many of us, kind of can't tone it down, has a hard time getting to the point of stillness where inspiration can come to you. So when I asked her how she breathes up through her chest. She said, like when the doctor tells you to take a deep breath, and when you breathe that way, your chest rises and extends outwards, you're automatically triggering a cortisol response because you're going into the fight or flight side of the nervous system. So that's going to just exacerbate the mind running around with a million thoughts, a minute. It's just going to increase the stress hormones. It's going to wear out your body. It's going to wear out your mind. And it's going to cause a lot of dis-ease, which could lead to disease. So just by breathing properly, like through meditation, just focusing on your breath, breathing abdominally, as you breathe in, the diaphragm goes downwards and your belly expands out, the sides expand out, and even the low back, there's a feeling of expansion. And you could do it just to a slow count in of 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold 1, 2, exhale 1, 2, 3, 4. And just go with that type of pattern. And that could take you straight out of that fight or flight and bring you into the rest and digest, where you're producing serotonin and melatonin. which are feel-good chemicals, also help you improve your sleep. So it's imperative. Little changes just in breathing can bring about incredible change in our body and also in our thoughts. So setting daily intentions, much like meditation, setting daily intentions or affirmations can help us choose the direction of our thoughts. So some things you could say are things like, I am positive, happy, and thankful. I am full of life and joy. I intend to practice unconditional love. Better yet, I am unconditional love. And so again, instead of I intend to practice, they should change that into I am. There is power in the I am, and that's part of the whole lesson from the Old Testament. When Moses says to God, who should I say sent me? He says basically the I am. And I am is a huge phrase that could actually change our mindset. It could change our physical body. It could change everything. So be very careful when you use it and make sure that it's positive. You don't want to make any negative statements, and especially repeating those on a regular basis, because that's going to help you manifest that negative outcome. And over here, I intend to make someone smile today. And, you could again reword it into something that is already happening. So just like with prayer, we don't want to word something like, in a begging, pleading way. You instead reword it and give thanks for it already, as if it's already done. That it's one of the keys. We must turn off the negative thoughts. That is huge, turning off the negative thoughts. And so I wanted to share this with you guys. There's a QiGong Global Summit going on. And so you could register online for free. And also, I have my own videos. There's a lot of other wonderful people out there that have videos on QiGong as well. And I tell you, some of the most incredible energy that I've ever experienced has been at QiGong summits, QiGong get-togethers, retreats. Incredible. These people are amazing, just amazing. And so these are some of the people that are going to be in this event. Daisy Lee, I've met her. She was amazing. Lee Holden has made probably more QiGong videos than anybody on the planet. And it was a lot of fun as well doing some QiGong with him. Robert Peng was the most amazing one I've ever experienced up front. This gentleman looks half his age, literally half his age. His vitality is incredible. He trained the old-fashioned way back in China, literally the old-fashioned way, with getting down into a deep stance, the master lighting a candle under your butt, and the master saying to hold that stance and then coming back like 5 hours later, literally. But his energy, his vitality is just incredible. So I would highly recommend checking out anything that he has out there. A lot of these other people are actual friends as well. Mickey DeVos. There's so many amazing teachers here that I would highly recommend. And a friend over here as well, Sharon Rose, is the host. She's a filmmaker and author and also a healer. So I would encourage you guys to check out this summit, but also just delve deeper into QiGong, because QiGong is going to be, in my opinion, and really we should just say energy work, because that's what QiGong means in Chinese. But this is the healing of the future. In my opinion, there's going to be nothing more powerful than this, because as we go up in vibration, as our consciousness changes, we will learn how to set our intentions, and we'll be able to manifest changes in a positive way quicker than ever. And so I want to just take a look at a couple of things here that you guys sent in. So this is the moon, obviously. Well, maybe not so obviously, but it is the moon. And so I guess the question is this a lens flare? And honestly, I'm not the best one to ask with this, because a lot of times I don't see things you guys see, or I'll just basically throw something out the window saying, I don't know about that. But, it doesn't seem to move, where you can see the lens flare over here moving. So, curious anyway. And so I wanted to share that with you guys. See what you guys think of that. Is that something by the moon? Now, I shared with you guys before a long time ago, well, not too long ago, maybe about 6 months ago, when I was outside North Carolina staring up at the full moon with a friend, and all of a sudden, all the craters and all the detail on the moon went blank. And I looked at her, she looked at me, because she saw it at the same time. We looked up, it was blank, and then it all came right back. So I gotta wonder, was that a mass hallucination? As we've talked about, there's a lot of Native American legends, indigenous people legends that say the moon wasn't always there, that say it was brought here by some extraterrestrials. And then get you thinking about the hollow moon thing. Why did it ring like a bell? Is it really just a mothership? And was it just a holographic impression that they're sharing with us? And so we have a few other photos to go through here as well. And so a lot of these were sent in by Ruben, who is a very good friend. And this is up in Utah. This has been one of the things that's been most enlightening and yet perplexing to me, is looking at these structures out in the desert, in American Southwest, and the West, is, Utah's not really South. I have the strongest feeling now that there was a very high culture here, and perhaps it was an ET-based culture, or maybe it's leftovers from Atlantis, after Atlantis, maybe pre-Atlantis, who knows? But I really think that there was an advanced civilization here in the American West that suffered some amazing sort of cataclysm. Maybe it was like an all-out war. It makes me think of the wars between the gods, and especially, the wars between the Titans and the Elder Gods, the wars with the gods, especially when you start reading the Puranas and the Vedas and the Upanishads and all the Hindu Vedic texts, talking and describing the Vimanas. If you read the Ramayana, I mean, they're in flying machines. They're like shooting at each other in flying machines. To me, it feels like it's pretty obvious there was high tech here, whether it's human or non-human. I don't think we have a definitive answer, at least in most people's minds. Some people believe. I do think there's extraterrestrials, but then I've had direct experience myself, as I've shared with you guys. So many of these things hit me as like monuments. They hit me as monuments. That looks like a head to me. I mean, you gotta wonder. You really gotta wonder. So many of these things feel like they are monuments, things that were something, and now, they're just in such a bad state of decay. And what caused it, I don't know, but whatever it was big. Doesn't it hit you guys as strange too, how some of these rocks are just so incredibly balanced upon the other? How did they ever get that way? I just don't buy conventional thought. I really don't. And so Ruben put down eagles, but this reminds me too of Sedona, as I was just staring and seeing how, so much of it looked like they were monuments, they were statues, and then the energy there was really interesting. Really interesting. And so many people love the energy there. Very positive energy. Tell me that doesn't look like something that belongs in Egypt. And we hear those legends of things being found that were Egyptian, underneath some areas in Arizona, like up around the Grand Canyon. Well, the thought is, especially if you read like the Emerald Tablets, these are survivors of Atlantis going off in different directions. And so Egypt was basically brought into its culture that we've seen the wreckage of, and we still have a legacy of, by Atlanteans. And perhaps this is the same thing. And of course, with Atlantis, there was conflict and war that destroyed everything. When you've seen those statues of the Egyptian gods that are so huge, this kind of reminds me, it gives me that feeling of that. It's just that everything is so worn down, so eroded. Maybe purposeful? Just throw that out there to keep us from knowing the bigger picture. When we start talking about mud floods and stuff, maybe things, weren't so long ago. There's a hidden history that we're starting to uncover. Look at how square that is. It kind of feels to me like it might be a Greco-Roman structure, but obviously there's cultures that have been here that were more advanced than we are right now, and probably way more advanced spiritually than we are right now. That's interesting. To me, that looks like a Anunnaki cone head. Some of the Paracas skulls, but it could be other things as well. Who knows what that is, but it's just curious that it's like that. Does nature do that? And again, this is up in Utah. Utah's always had a very forbidden feeling to me. And there's a lot of our hidden history there as well. And you guys may or may not know about Skinwalker Ranch, and there's been some creepy goings on there. Look at these structures, just so cool. Could almost see a face right in that one too. And my wife went to Monument Valley, and that made a huge impact on her, and she felt like her life was changed ever after. Completely. Like she was just changed. It's just like the energy itself changed her in a positive direction. It was a definite spiritual thing for her. So when we look at some of these ancient statues and stuff, really makes you wonder, are we looking at things like that? Structures out there in the West? Is that what we're looking at when we see some of these things? And look at how square that is. Nature does that. I don't know. I do know about that. I tend to think there's something really hidden there. So, what do you guys think about all that? What is our hidden history? What do you think? Is there an extraterrestrial influence? Or are we just simply talking about people with advanced technology that kept their technology while the rest of us started all over from scratch? What do you think about that idea? There's tons of secrets. Yes, Pablo says there's so much hidden from us, it's ridiculous. It most definitely is. Yeah, I've wanted to just, spend a lot of time just basically on the road, going from place to place and exploring and just, seeing all these things, feeling all these things for yourself, actually feeling it. Because when you feel the energy of something, you kind of know the truth. And so I had so many people talk to me about Sedona, always wanted to get out there. But when I felt that energy, to me, yeah, it feels to me like it very well may be perhaps an advanced ET civilization was there. If not, there most definitely is a spiritual energy there. It's undeniable. The spiritual energy is just incredible there. Yeah, and the giant thing too. Thank you, Chris. The giant thing. We're kind of led to believe that they were all bad. The red-haired giants that were cannibalistic. And that video I did, it surprised me a little bit that the video on the cannibalistic red-haired giants of Lovelock, Nevada was demonetized. But not only that, when they reviewed it, they verified that it was something that was not going to be suitable. So what is it that they don't want out there about the giants? There are also, I think, probably positive ones, because when you look at the Hindu tradition, and say if we look at some of the ones that were supposed to be giants, and we don't know exactly which ones were and which ones weren't, but Hanuman is somebody of gigantic proportions. And there's a footprint that's supposed to be Hanuman's footprint, and it's like 6 feet long. It would be something that would probably be 35, 36 feet tall. It's interesting because there's a lot of legends of benevolent ones, as well as the negatives. But we don't hear anything about the benevolent ones in our Western tradition, really. Just the negative ones. But the whole thing about the giants is all kind of hush-hush as well. Crispy says God is love, and that's the bottom line. So anything that is going to be contrary is not going to be of the highest and best. It's all about living heart-centered, living from the fourth chakra now, because that's where we're heading. So fascinating stuff. There's still a lot of stuff that goes on down underneath the ground. Of that, I have no doubt. Like I've shared with you guys, I walked on spots in the desert where there's nothing around, and it sounded hollow to me. And I have no doubt there's a lot going on there. So I want to thank everybody that is a Patreon. We have 69 Patreons, which is going wonderfully. And for as little as $1 a month, you would get access to some videos that don't go up on this venue. So there'll be some unique videos in there, as well as supporting the channel, which obviously it's been a very interesting time, to say the least, with everything that we've seen going on with stopping the free flow of information. So I want to thank everybody for joining me. As always, please do send your prayers to all those in need, especially our brothers and sisters down there in eastern Texas and over towards Louisiana getting hit now. It's just been one after the other, but do send your prayers and positive intention their way. As always, my friends, stay safe, God bless, and namaste.